Nick Rodriguez is one of the best no-gi grapplers in the world, and there's a lot to learn and take away from what he does to have such tremendous success. Nick has a very deliberate and specific game plan: get to the body lock. I'm going to teach you how he does that, his game plan, his tactics, where he goes wrong, his passing, his takedown game, and more. To make sure we're only using the most relevant and recent information, we'll only be looking at Nick's competition footage over the last 2 years. Let's get started. Before Jiu-Jitsu, Nick was a Division III college wrestler where he went 34-7. And in the stand-up, he's definitely a level above the majority of his opponents. He rolls like the typical wrestler turned Jiu-Jitsu athlete, meaning that you rarely see him in his guard. He always wants to be on top. If you do get him down, he's just going to get right back up. You're basically forced to play bottom position against him, and getting your offense going against him in your guard is a very difficult thing to do, as he keeps his hips low and far away from his opponent, and his base very wide. He's very hard to sweep. In fact, I couldn't find a single clip where he was swept. Only this one where he was almost swept, but his wrestling base and instincts kept him off his back. Just like he's good at staying off his back, he's also really good at keeping his opponent's backs pinned to the mat. He does so with the body lock. Nick is always after the body lock. It's where he does his best work. Whether utilizing it for takedowns or passing, Nick wants that body lock. When it comes to takedowns, Nick's goal is to either take the body lock during the stand-up and use the body lock to take his opponent down, or attack the legs and then immediately take the body lock to use it to pass. Nick has great awareness to transition when needed. For example, here he shoots the single, transitions to the body lock, but senses danger and goes right back to the legs in the form of a knee tap. If he stayed here and pursued the body lock, he'd likely get thrown, as going from the legs to the body can present some risk. Some don't know what to do and end up taking desperation shots from way far out. And then they're screwed, as Nick is going to capitalize with some counter wrestling. Because Nick is so hard to take down and keep down, his opponents often pull guard, as it's riskier to stand up with him, as you may land on the mat with his body lock already in place. Whereas if you pull guard, you might figure, I'm going to end up on the bottom anyways, might as well get there on my own terms. Nick is the natty king, and to be as jacked as he is, I'm sure he takes what he puts into his body very seriously, as do I, which is why I'm a huge fan of transparent labs. With transparent labs, you know exactly what's going into your body. All products have fully transparent labels. Ingredients are all natural and grass-fed. No artificial sweeteners, fillers, or colors. Use my link in the description and pinned comment or code Jordan for 10% off your order. If Nick manages to secure a body lock during or immediately after the takedown, then he'll start working the pass. If Nick's opponent pulls guard or Nick doesn't manage to get the body lock during or after the takedown, then what he's still looking to do is secure the body lock. The primary way that Nick does this is by timing his opponents when they try to come up to secure grips for themselves. Because Nick keeps his weight so far back and keeps his butt down by his heels, it's very difficult to get underneath him for guards like X guard and deep half. It's also difficult to enter sweeps that require you to get your hips underneath him, and difficult to enter leg entanglements. And this presents his opponents few options, with the most enticing option to sit up and secure the grips on the upper body, or wrestle up. But as his opponents attempt to sit up, this is when he strikes to enter the body lock, as this creates space between his opponent's body and the mat for Nick's grips to enter. I mean, look at all these examples. They're all the same. Opponent attempts to build some base by getting to their elbow or to their butt, so they can better reach for grips for themselves. Immediately, Nick dives right in for the body lock. Not always does Nick perfectly time his opponent's posturing up, and if he can't get the body lock as they do, he'll just redirect attention to the legs to keep his opponent down. Sometimes his opponents do manage to get all the way back up, but success is usually shortly lived. He just takes them back down. Nick will often disengage and then re-engage. This is a key part of his strategy, meaning that he enters the guard to attack and then briefly retreats from the guard. He does this for multiple reasons. 1. It encourages his opponents to posture up, in which case he attacks the body lock, as already stated. 2. He will disengage when he finds himself a bit too much at risk of his opponent's attacks. He'll momentarily exit the guard to stay safe. 3. The body lock isn't the only way which Nick passes. Let's explore that. Nick's secondary passing skill is passing from the outside, meaning he'll look to go around the legs to pass with passes like Toriano passes. He's not great at securing the pass when passing from the outside, but this is a difficult thing to do for anyone in no-gi against someone else who's high level. What he does accomplish with his outside passing is creating a scramble to either take the back, or a scramble to the front headlock, or a scramble that leads to the body lock. If he's unable to achieve any of these, he'll go right back to plan A of working towards a body lock. Now let's also get back to the body lock. If his opponents do a good job defending the body lock, Nick will instead switch to control of the head, the cranial shift as Danaher calls it. He'll also do this if he isn't controlling his opponents well enough with the body lock and they're able to posture up. Transitioning to the head will bring them right back down to the mat. To pass using the body lock, Nick does so the tried and true standard way of body lock passing. Body lock passing usually starts with the bottom player either having 2 butterfly hooks, a half guard, or both, meaning half guard butterfly. In half guard or half guard butterfly, what Nicky's looking to do is backstep. This is how I and basically everyone else passes with the body lock. To backstep when the opponent has 2 butterfly hooks, you first need to shelf the leg, meaning first position your opponent's shin in front of you with their foot on the side. This takes away their ability to keep their foot from hooking onto you with their instep, their sticky hooks, which just means butterfly hooks that want to stay attached to your legs. Now let's look at where Nick goes wrong. Sometimes Nick loses control of his opponents during transitions. I don't think he has the same patience as a guy like Gordon Ryan, which can lead him to try to attack and transition too prematurely at times. In certain situations in Jiu-Jitsu, it can be a battle of who goes first. If your opponent is patient, they may wait for you to go first and counter as you transition. Whereas if you're patient, you can wait for them to go first and counter as they transition. This is where Nick can struggle, but this is a normal thing for anyone, including those who are high level, whether it be on the ground, standing, or even striking. Nick also isn't the best at taking backs, which is pretty normal for a wrestler turned jiu-jitsu athlete. I think if he worked more on developing this skill, it would further round out his game and complement very well his lethal top game in wrestling. Nick's in and out approach leads him to tremendous success, but he's not always perfect with it. When he was in on Gordon Ryan and tried to come out, this is when Gordon took advantage of the situation by staying connected, which led to Nick positioning his hips closer to Gordon, and Gordon getting underneath his hips for a leg lock. Whereas earlier in the match, Nick did a better job of keeping his hips far away from Gordon, which again is part of Nick's game plan. Although Nick does a great job with his base and weight placement, he isn't perfect 100% of the time. For example here, Felipe Pena forces Nick's left knee off the mat, and Nick doesn't do a great job recognizing the threat. With his left knee off the mat, it positions most of Nick's weight onto his right knee and allows Pena to enter the hips. However, Nick's counter leg locks have vastly improved over time, and here he manages to turn a potential bad situation into a good one. He did the same thing against Gordon Ryan in their second match. Gordon was able to get underneath Nick's hips. This time Nick went on the offense and broke Gordon's foot. Nick sometimes, but rarely, finds himself out of position when coming back in from going out. Like right here with Nick's positioning, he's basically giving his opponent a wrestle up, which could be more detrimental against an opponent closer to his size. Lastly, I think that Nick could benefit from adding a couple more tools to his passing. Specifically, I think that Nick could benefit from exploring more over-under passing, like the great Bernardo Faria. I know firsthand how powerful Bernardo's over-under passing is. Over-under passing would complement his game well, as it's a very similar style of passing to what he's already doing. Nick is in the same position searching for the body lock as the position in which he could secure over-under grips. I think that the dual threat of both the body lock and the over-under pass would really put his opponents under a lot of stress. Let me know if you enjoy this style of video and which competitor that you'd like to see me break down next.